Most people drive right past this place. It sits on a stretch of road in Durham, North Carolina. Just a simple farmhouse. Clapboard walls, stone chimney, a small kitchen house out back. Nothing about it looks like the end of a war. But on a spring morning in April 1865, the bloodiest war in American history came to an end right here. Not at Appomattox, not in Richmond, here on this farm. And most of America doesn't even know this place exists. Hey y'all, I'm Carolina Tony. Today the road brings us to Bennett Place in Durham, North Carolina, the site of the largest troop surrender in the entire Civil War. And we'll step into that story right after this station identification. To understand what happened here, y'all, you've got to go back a few weeks. It's the spring of 1865. The Confederacy, it's about had it. Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia on April the 9th. But there were still tens of thousands of Confederate soldiers in the field, right here in the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida. The war was not over yet. Union General William Tecumseh Sherman had just completed one of the most destructive military campaigns in American history. His march from Atlanta to the sea. 60,000 soldiers. They burned, they dismantled, they lived off the land. Total war. That was Sherman's policy. And in March of 1865, he turned that army north, straight into North Carolina. Now here's the interesting part. Confederate General Joseph E. Johnston, he had just been put back in command of the Army of Tennessee. And he tried to stop Sherman at a little place called Bentonville. It didn't work out too good, and Johnston knew it. The days were numbered. Now before we can get into those surrender meetings, I want to talk about the people whose name is on this place, because James and Nancy Bennett, they didn't ask for any of this. These were real people. Back in 1846, James Bennett was 40 years old when he and Nancy and their 3 children settled right here on a 325-acre farm in Orange County. They grew corn, wheat, oats, potatoes. They even raised hogs. James was also a tailor and a cobbler. He sold horses, feed, tobacco plugs, and even distilled liquor. He was a self-sufficient man, a working man. But the war took from this family too. James' 3 sons, his son-in-law, all died during the war years. By the time April 1865 rolled around, James Bennett was an old man. He had lost too much. And 2 generals decided to sit down at his table. Now imagine for a second, you're a farmer. You've outlived your children. And one day, these 2 men who might end this war came knocking on your door and asked to come inside. The 2 generals met on the road. Johnston suggested the nearby farmhouse owned by James and Nancy Bennett, just for a private talk. This well has been reconstructed. It's where General Sherman and Johnston tie their horses up at. The original well was just a little bit closer to the house. It was right in this area here. Now here's where this story takes a turn that most people don't know about. On April 17th, 1865, Sherman is riding out of Raleigh to meet Johnston here at this little farm. And that morning, before he even gets on his horse, a telegram comes in. President Abraham Lincoln had been shot the night before at Ford's Theater in Washington. Sherman read that telegram, and he made a decision right then and there. He swore the telegraph operator to secrecy. He did not want that news to reach his 60,000 soldiers before peace talks could happen. He was afraid of what they might do to Raleigh, to North Carolina, and to anybody else that they came across. So, when Sherman and Johnston sat down together inside this house, just the two of them, no witnesses, Sherman pulled out the telegram and showed it to Johnston. Now Johnston was his enemy, but Johnston looked at that paper and he said that Lincoln's death was, and I want to get this right, the greatest possible calamity for the South. Think about that. A Confederate general mourning the Union president, because he understood without Lincoln, the peace would be harder. And he was right. They met again the next day, April the 18th. And Sherman, wanting this war to be truly over, he went further than anybody expected, way further. Sherman sat down and wrote out what he called a basis of agreement. And y'all, this document was generous. It guaranteed civil rights. It recognized southern state governments. They offered a general amnesty protecting Confederate soldiers, officers, and even Jefferson Davis himself. It was more than just a military surrender. It was a peace plan. Johnston accepted it, Jefferson Davis accepted it, and then Washington rejected it. See, Lincoln was dead. The mood in Washington was not one of generosity. Secretary of War Edward Stanton tore Sherman apart in the newspapers, accused him of acting outside his authority. Ulysses Grant himself rode down to Raleigh, quietly out of respect for his friend, to tell Sherman, start over, military terms only, same as at Appomattox. This is the original table that was in the Bennett home during the surrender negotiations. One of the generals used this table to write on, although whether it was General Johnston or General Sherman is unclear. Y'all, if you are enjoying this story, be sure to give us a big old thumbs up. Be sure to share this video with your family and friends. And if you have not yet subscribed, please do so, because we've got stories like this coming every Monday and Friday. Now, let's get back to Durham, North Carolina, April 1865. Jefferson Davis did not take the new terms well. He ordered Johnston to disband the infantry, scatter the foot soldiers, and escape south with the mounted cavalry. Keep fighting, keep running. Davis wasn't ready to quit. Johnston disobeyed him. On April the 26th, 1865, General Joseph E. Johnston came back to this farm, this simple farmhouse, for a third time. He sat down with Sherman and he surrendered. The agreement was straightforward this time, military only, same terms Lee got. But the scope of it, y'all, the scope of it was something else entirely. Lee surrendered roughly 28,000 soldiers at Appomattox. Johnston surrendered 89,270 soldiers in the Carolinas, Georgia and Florida also. This was the largest troop surrender in the entire Civil War. right here on this farm. 2 more surrenders would follow in the weeks after. Richard Taylor in Alabama, Kirby Smith down in New Orleans. But it was Johnston who surrendered here that broke the back of the Confederacy. When those 89,000 men laid down the arms, the war was effectively all over. Now here's something that you wouldn't expect to find in this story. You want to talk about unintended consequences? When Sherman's 60,000 soldiers came through this area and then lingered after surrender, waiting for their paroles to be processed over in Greensboro, they found something: local tobacco. What they called bright leaf tobacco, grown right here in the Durham area. And they liked it. Soldiers from New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, they went home after the war and they wrote back asking for more of that Durham tobacco. The demand exploded, and it turned Durham, North Carolina, into one of the biggest tobacco towns in America. The entire economy of this region built up from the aftermath of the surrender. In 1921, 56 years after surrender, a fire swept through and destroyed the Bennett house and the kitchen. The chimney was all that was left standing. What you see here today was carefully reconstructed in the 1960s, using Civil War era sketches and early photographs as a guide. Every board, every window, every piece of this house was built to match what stood here. Before we go, I want to show y'all something on these grounds. And I think that says a lot about what this place means. This here is the Unity Monument. 2 separate pillars joined at the top, north and south. James Bennett himself stopped farming in 1875. He was an old man. He had lost his sons. He died in 1878. Nancy passed on 6 years after that. They never sought fame from what had happened. They just lived their lives in the history at that kitchen table. Most school textbooks in the Civil War at Appomattox, and I understand why. Lee was the most favored general in the Confederacy. But the truth is, Appomattox was the beginning of the end. Bennett Place, this farm, this family's home, that was the end. 89,000 soldiers, the largest surrender in the war. And it happened here, in this simple farmhouse on this quiet road in Durham, North Carolina, because a Confederate general decided that disobeying orders and saving lives was the right thing to do. If you get the chance to come out here, y'all, it's absolutely worth the trip. The grounds are peaceful. The reconstructed farmhouse and the kitchen tell the story well. And the stone chimney, knowing that it was standing right here the day Johnston signed those papers, that alone is worth pulling off the ground for. I am Carolina Tony, and I'll see you on our next adventure. And now, and as always, y'all have a good day.